Welcome to the AI Lab Unfiltered podcast, where we explore and take a deep dive on artificial intelligence and where where the rubber hits the road is what we like to say. I'd like to welcome a very, very special guest today, Elizabeth Goede, who is very passionate about women in AI and technology. Elizabeth, I've known you for decades at this point. I don't want to give away too much to say how old we are, but I've known you for a long time. Tell me more about your passion and what drove you into what you do.
Yeah, sure.
Give me some of that background.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. It is special to, be able to share this with you. So I really got originally into artificial intelligence actually way back in 2012. And I was a co-founder of a tech company back there. And we used to refer to artificial intelligence as algorithms. And we created an algorithm that actually matched the chemical components of wine to your flavor profile. And once you
I like where this is going.
Bring any examples?
Yeah, we created all these wine personalities, and it was really exciting because we had such a huge success of being able to get people the wine that they loved because of the fact that we used all these very complex algorithms that allowed us to do that. And I worked with all these brilliant people, like a double PhD out of MIT and, one of the first master sommeliers out of California. I mean, it was like the most amazing dream team. And when you actually start to look at what technology can do, especially with something that you wouldn't commonly think about matching to tech like wine,
right?
I sort of stayed in that space. And back then you had to work with developers, right? You had to work with people that were really, really smart and even mathematicians, right? That actually figured out like, what is the formula that you're trying to solve? Fast forward to 2017, and in 2017, generative AI came out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you look at the fact that you can leverage this tech, you can manipulate this tech for your own use without a developer. Things were getting really exciting. And I remember going to, clients that I had in the digital space. And I said, listen, you're going to need to change how you're hiring because you can't just hire a developer now. You've got to hire a strategist, the people who can understand how to use and leverage this tech.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2022, late 2022, and there was a note that came out from one of the tools that I used at the time is now called Jasper. And they were going to host the first Gen AI conference in San Francisco on Valentine's Day in 2023. Now, what happened from when they announced that to when the conference happened was OpenAI actually came out through the New York Times. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's the topic of everything. And this conference goes from just an intimate, sort of user base to the premier AI conference, like overnight. They moved the location 3 times. They finally capped it out at 1,200 because they couldn't get a bigger space than that. Tickets were going on the black market for thousands of dollars. I mean, it was a wild time, but it was a one-day conference and they had everyone there. NVIDIA was there. Yeah. OpenAI was there. I mean, everybody was there this day. Now, you say, Elizabeth, you're still not talking about women yet. But this was the catalytic moment. There were less than 100 women at this conference. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to wait in line for the bathroom. And I thought, you know what? We are at a huge moment in time to not have women sitting in this room. And I will also note that the only 2 women speakers that day were in I like to call it the boxes that women are allowed to live in. The first is marketing.
Yep.
And the second is basically ethics. And those are the spaces that women are sort of allowed to live in. They're not allowed to live in the other spaces. And I would say even still to today, when you look at AI conferences, you look at tech conferences, the deck is stacked where it is predominantly men that are taking the stage and men that are being profiled, men that are being funded in these spaces. And when you look at it's basically a third of users, a third of leaders, a third of AI companies, and that's on the high end.
Yeah,
are women.
So on the user side too, it's even less on the user side.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. I didn't either. That's interesting.
Because it's not because it's only being presented to men, right? Like it's available to everyone that wants to sign up for an account.
Yeah.
So I'm less of an expert in this area.
Sure.
like 0%. So do you have thoughts on why that might be, like just the user adoption?
I do. I think that there's a few things, and the reason why this is actually a bigger issue than just saying that we don't have enough representation, right? There certainly is that issue. But the bigger issue is the fact that women are sort of like the mama bears, right? They're the arbiters of the family, of making sure of like what people, everybody does, right? What they find to be acceptable. Women have a higher emotional intelligence. Women have a higher sensitivity to right and wrong. There aren't as many shades of gray for women. And so from that standpoint, they're the protector. So they look at these from the skeptical angle of what is it that this tool might do wrong versus what is it that the tool can do to help. Now, why does that become an issue? Like, why is that scary, as we look forward to things? And I think it's scary for a couple of reasons. Number one, tell a kid they can't do something. Then what happens is they're learning from the people they shouldn't be learning from, right? They're learning from the stranger.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, we look at what women can actually do and how they can leverage, really understanding what artificial intelligence can do, even at a base level. Like, look at how it can help you just at home. And start there. Start with those easy things that aren't scary. It's the take everything that's in my refrigerator and, tell me what to make for dinner. Those are really good, easy places to start that aren't scary. Then it's sort of the next step, which is, when we were all young, right? I mean, I know
Younger.
Drew yeah. When we were younger, we didn't have computers when we were going through school, right? We had to look everything up in a dictionary. We had typewriters that, it was really exciting when they had sort of the whiteout band that you could actually backspace, right? AI is really sort of that next level for students, which is like when spell check came out. Were we going to keep students from being able to use spell check?
Right.
When calculators started doing all these scientific types of calculations, did we keep them from there? No, we were able to actually go to the next level because we weren't being held back by these things that limited us. So I look at artificial intelligence in this way. You still have to be smart when you use it, right? There are still, even though it's getting smarter every day, it still has hallucinations. It still can misinterpret. Like, if you don't know how to ask the question, you're not going to get the answer that you want because it can't reach inside your brain and figure it out.
Right.
And sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
When I'm being mindful that there's going to be a wide, maybe some people will listen to this podcast and maybe in a wide spectrum, people that have never used it. So you mentioned hallucination. So for someone who's never heard that term before, like AI is going to make me hallucinate. Like, could you just explain for, what that means for people?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't explain that. It's basically when it sort of makes things up. So, I mean, think about the amount of calculations that are actually being done to give a return. And we think about the fact that, we have to restart our computer when it all of a sudden isn't really behaving and doing the things that we want to. AI is a little bit the same way, where it might sort of give you something that looks like it's real. So it will give you even a link and a citation. And if you follow that link and you actually look for it to validate that citation, it's not accurate. And that's really, it is a technical term in the industry, a hallucination, which basically is just saying that the information is not actually what you're looking for. It's not accurate information.
So going back to the user adoption, is it overcoming the fear of what are the bad things that it could do, or like how, if you were in a room full of high school students and they were all female, like how would you speak to them about AI so that you would get them more interested in using it? And
do you think it's generational? I think is another part of it.
Yeah.
Is it because clearly we never grew up with computers, and then all of a sudden we had them, we're going, oh my God, like Google's the best thing I've ever seen. And why are you not embracing Google even when that came out? Versus younger generation where they're like, we've always had this. It's not that big a deal. Versus an older generation, which might go, I'm hesitant on using that at all. I'll stick to my, encyclopedia or whatever they use. But do you think it's generational to where younger women or younger girls are embracing it much more than older? And then going to Pete's question of why are they hesitant at all to use it?
Yeah, don't give me too many questions at once. I won't remember them all.
Here's 15 questions. Please answer them in order.
When we think about the generational, I think that's a really interesting question. I think that you have to, in some respects, the younger the generation we're used to, it's like a young person now can figure out how to navigate a program on a phone faster than their parent can, because it's just their brains are forming in a different way where they understand how to use it. Mm-hmm. But the question is it being put in front of them for them to use it? So then you have sort of this gap, right? So you think about, okay, by the time they get to maybe middle school, high school, there's more autonomy, and now they're able to get into it. I could see that being influenced, but you still have to have interest in it. You still have to understand, like, how is this going to benefit me? Why would I want to do it? Now, the fact that it's in the news and in the conversation that's happening, I think that's exciting and interesting. But I run into people every single day that are like, yeah, but I don't really see how it would help me. Like, I don't see why I would need to use it. Or they think that the only option for them is, ChatGPT, which I openly talk about the ethical concerns with tools like that. But
explain that real quick, because I thought that was interesting, because I use the hell out of ChatGPT, and as well as Claude, Perplexity, just depending on what I'm doing. But you brought up a really good point about why ChatGPT has different ethics to it. Just briefly touch on that, just for context.
I talk a lot about, like, where is the ethical divide and who's responsible for it, right? We don't have any policy right now that actually controls it. And so really the policy is left to us. It's not even left to the industry. It's literally left to the users. And we decide where we sort of give our share of wallet, what tools that we actually, are going to spend money on. We decide where we're going to spend our time, which also, becomes part of the user base that goes into them. And a lot of what people, I think, don't take the time to look at is sort of, three different aspects, right? One is, who's the actual founder? Who's the CEO that's running the company? And what are the things and behaviors that they are doing? And do we think that those are things that would be the same values that we would have? I think the second thing is, what is it that the tool, where are the boundaries of the tool? Like, how far does it allow you to expand? What are sort of the restrictions, and what is the philosophy of the company based on those? And then the last is, what do we understand what we should or shouldn't do with these tools? What are our own boundaries that we should or shouldn't do in these tools? So from that standpoint, we need to sort of look at those things and evaluate from those things. Now, it's not that I don't use ChatGPT, and it's not that I couldn't tell you how to use it. I mean, when we create, sort of our prompts, which is basically just directions, it's meant to be done in sort of what we would call NLP, which is natural language programming, which allows us to say it the same way I would say it to you. Yeah. So if I told you, Drew, I want information on, let's say we're going to use Perplexity, which is a great tool for finding stats. And I could give it to you the same way I could give it to Perplexity, which is, I want to know how many women are using artificial intelligence. That's the same way that, that's when people talk about prompting and people talk about prompt engineering. It's really just like a fancy way of saying how you're going to give really detailed instructions. And so when we think about what sort of prompts we're going to give, we're going to give boundaries around what are the right and wrong prompts that we should give. And when we go too deep into doing things that aren't necessarily right, we're now feeding the tool with bad information that also isn't right. And so we have to think about that as well.
Interesting. I think that, to make a better tool, I think that's really just going to screw it up and make it just learn improper things, I guess, if you will.
No,
that's my 5th grade version, because that's how I talk in ChatGPT.
Well, which is kind of funny, because you can actually, when you're interacting with the tools, you can ask it to reduce it to a more easily understandable way. So, again, for people that have never used it, you can give it a complicated request, but ask it to explain it to you. And there's a kind of a meme, like, explain like I'm 5, or ELI 5, right? You can say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, or explain it to me like I'm a high school senior. Yeah. And it'll adjust that output and help. I've done it at work. Like, I work with a lot of really smart people, and they're all very technical, and they throw around these terms, and I'm over on the side here kind of like, what the hell?
What does that mean?
Can you explain this to somebody who's not like a technologist, and it will make me appear smart. So thank you, AI, for
it is interesting too when you look at the different language models and what they do better than others. ChatGPT has a tendency to be very wordy and very fluffy in the way that it gives information back. Whereas, something like Claude is going to distill it down and be more concise about how it's output. And in fact, during the day when so many users are on it, it just will default to the concise, model. But when we look at, creating tables and things like that, for whatever reason, ChatGPT does tables better.
Right.
When we look at things like Perplexity does the charts and graphs for you. So when we look at these tools, really our tool bag, it can't just be one tool. I always say that I have like 3 rules for using artificial intelligence. The first is have a goal. Like, know what you're actually trying to do. If you just sit down and have no plan, you are going to all of a sudden realize it's time for dinner and you don't even know where your day went.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The second is, as we talked earlier about the hallucination piece and how these tools sometimes, create their own reality. We need to make sure we validate the information that comes back. And so it's have a goal, find the right tool for the goal, and then make sure that you actually validate what came back to make sure that it's accurate. It still requires a human.
It does.
Sure.
It's great advice because there are, and you even said before, you mentioned a couple different tools, and I've kind of stick with one, and I don't really move around a lot, but I understand that they have their different strengths. At least at this time, it just feels like in the future there's going to be less differences between the major models, but right now there are those good applications for, like, I've heard Claude is a lot better at coding. I don't use it a lot for coding. You might with your background, but do you have a go-to, like your day-to-day, like your daily driver?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, it's Claude for me. I call him Chip. He's my work husband. But from that standpoint, really, I mean, we have our tech stack for our team is, probably about 30 tools, just depending upon what we're doing, in that day. And I would say this, I mean, the more that you work in one tool, the more that it will get to know you. And we call it sort of like seasoning that tool. Yep. And when we actually onboard our clients and, are sort of setting up different types of automations or things like that for them, or let's say, they're new and just getting into a language model, we actually create external tool, like basically like a template that they can then take to whatever long language model that they want to use. And we set it up with all the information they would need to actually season their assistant. Now, the benefit for that is if ChatGPT is down one day and you still need to get work done, or you still have things that you need to get out that require this, you need to be able to quickly move. And so, And so for us, I know it sounds very analog to say that that's like a foundational, like when we go in and work on AI, we're going to start with a document. But from that standpoint, it's really the foundations, and the foundations are really so important because I always tell people, like, if you have an error that comes partway through and you don't fix it, it's going to fall you like a bad penny, and it's going to actually exponentially get worse as it goes. So with AI, it's really important. Like when it starts to go off the rails, you either need to start a new chat or you need to figure out if you can course correct, because it won't course correct, I guess is what I'm trying to say, without your help.
I think that's a good point, that like seasoning, I always call it seasoning the grill. Mm-hmm. I mean, the old adage goes shit in, shit out. I mean, if you're not going to set it up correctly and you're just going to throw a prompt in there and go, well, it just gave me this and this doesn't work. Or the flip of that, you take the output that it gave you and you go, well, this is it. This is now the gospel that I'm going to go use, right. And it might not even be correct. I think you do need to set it up correctly. Multiple tools, because they have their strengths in different areas, and really use those and get to know those to be effective in it. And I think that's hard for someone that has a fear of jumping into it going, I don't know, and I don't know if this is correct, versus obviously the repetition of using it.
Or they finally get over the fear and they type something in and they don't get the response that they're expecting because they've heard all the miracles on the media of people that are, people are getting replaced in their job by AI and everything. Yeah. So they type something in and they get a response that's not at all what they expect. So that comes back to, you can actually have the AI guide you to a better prompt. Would you mind talking about that?
Sure. And I would also say this, AI takes work. It's not a miracle pill, right? It is the instructions that you give to it. It's the working with it to tell you what it needs. I mean, I don't know if this is going to exactly answer your question directly, Pete, but when you're working in artificial intelligence and you start with something, I recommend you start with something very, very simple first, like the most simple way that you can ask for something, because you will know right away if the line of thought that you're going down is going to get you something that you want out of it. And frankly, these models are very different than when they first came out. They required an extensive amount of information to make the request because they weren't smart enough. But because we have so many data points now, I mean, it's like something like 20 times the size of Wikipedia. Because of all those basically trillions of data points that are in there, it's smarter. So start really simple. And then when you get the output, you can even just ask it to refine how that output is. Okay, based on this output that came back, what are the other things that I'm missing here? What are the other things that could be valuable to this that would help me? Like, how else can I improve this? And then you literally treat it like a human assistant is really the best way to think about it, which is if you had, an intern or you had a colleague sitting with you and, you just threw out like a random question first and they answered and it wasn't quite what you were looking for, you might rephrase the question or you might say, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about that. And then you can sort of go down. I mean, the more that you can just use your own language, the more that it's also going to answer you in your own language. If you start using too much of other people's language that maybe has very specific types of words that aren't your words that you would typically use, it's going to reflect that in the language that comes back. And so even when you get other people's prompts, you should figure out how you make them your own.
Right. And don't ever start an email with, I hope this email finds you well. Because we all know you used AI for that. So going back to female and women in AI, how has some of that changed over the past decade with women in technology and especially in AI? How have you seen that grow? Clearly, you've been in it for a while to see that growth and work with some of these people. I see some of the amazing people you're working with. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's growing. We're more than just one out of 100, so that's good. Or so that part's good. I think where again generative has really been interesting. Where we're at in the tech space right now is there's so much that we can sort of do on our own now that it doesn't allow us to be discriminated against. I mean, a lot of it is that we just don't have a lot of people that support us. We don't have a lot of people that look to us and say, well, what do you think? Right. It's more so, I mean, we might pipe up and give a good example, but if our male colleague sitting next to us says the same thing, they're only going to hear that person. Now, I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's new book, The Revenge of the Tipping Point, but there's some really interesting thoughts that he has in there with, we have to sort of get to a mass, right? So we need to at least get to a third of the conversation, which we're almost there right now. But from that standpoint, I mean, if I see one more conference or one more, online virtual symposium that is an all male panel, I'm going to lose it. It's not that hard. We're out there. We want to take the stage. We have lots of really interesting things to share. And to be honest with you, as women, we don't have time for like just frivolous conversations, right? Like we want to actually take action and get things done. And so from that standpoint, it's a little bit different too. Women are more likely to run workshops because we want to actually give you something tangible that you're going to take and give action from.
Which you made very clear in your LinkedIn post about your upcoming conference about, enough of the talking about what could happen in the future. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts and like how you can actually use it. So would you mind just kind of diving into that and what you've got coming up? And because I think it's really relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have the AI in Action conference. You can find it at AIinactionconference.com. And that this is really meant to be basically 2 days of micro workshops where it's meant for AI to be in your business to help make it better. And we have people coming in from all over the country, which I'm really, really excited about. And some of these people are really, really doing amazing things in their own right. And I'm really excited to be able to bring those types of, I speak a lot on innovation, using AI for innovation, using AI to help with efficiencies. And frankly, that's what we help a lot of our clients with, which is, how do you actually make this better, do this better? So I'm really excited to be doing the innovation portion.
What could I expect if I'm an attendee? So I'm a leader in an organization. I hear all about AI. Maybe I have a ChatGPT subscription, or I'm using the free version, or whatever it is, and I want to invest in this conference because I want to bring AI back to my company. Like, what are some things that I could expect if I were to show up? And obviously, the innovation part that you'd be leading, if you want to start there, but other practical applications as well.
Sure. So we actually set up the conference to be sort of leaving the in-room space for the leaders within the business so that they not only can, work and innovate with other people and network with other people of their peers, right, of people at the same level. But then we also added the virtual component, so it allows them to extend it to their team so that everyone's sort of hearing the same thing when they go back. But it allows sort of those two different, more intimate in-person for the leaders within the business, and then, for their extended teams in the virtual or for people who can't travel. The other types of things are going to be, how do you actually go viral? So when you think about being able to sort of get your business as being more of a speaking point, we have someone who is talking about how you actually create your brand theme song. So it's about using AI to actually create music. We have somebody talking about the actual sort of what it's like to manage people and how you can use AI as it relates to sort of like the thing that everyone dreads every year, which is like review cycles. Yep. We have somebody talking about long form content. So the benefit of long form content, of course, is the more content you have, in the old world, we would call it in the can, right? Yeah. But the more content that you have, the more exponential content you will have later. And so I'm trying to think, we'll be talking about, how you measure yourself against your competitors in the marketplace. So how are you actually finding the conversations that are happening about your business? And I know I'm forgetting other things right now, but those are sort of the top highlights. So the great thing is that this is going to help from your business from all different perspectives, whether you're in the HR side and you're looking for how do you help from like a people standpoint, whether you are in the sort of operations side of like, how do you continue to sort of innovate with, if you're from the sales side. That is what I forgot about. One of the founders is coming from a tool that actually helps you communicate with people in the way that they want to be communicated to. So from that sales standpoint, how do you have these conversations with people in terms that they're going to understand and want to purchase from? And so from that standpoint, what we really did is try to set it up from all the different disciplines within a business so that really holistically, when they go back, this is like a major influence into their business.
And your intended audience here, obviously, is women for this conference, right? Or are Drew and I invited?
Yeah. So it's actually not exclusive to just women coming. What was important to me is that it was women voices from the stage. Yeah. And because we oftentimes don't get that opportunity, and especially in a topic like this, they're really the ones best suited to be the speakers and the leaders, voice leaders here.
And let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of unique perspectives or skill sets do women bring to AI development and AI implementation? Because I know there's definitely a difference. You and I have been on different councils and stuff where we're working. Shout out to Michigan Council of Women in Technology. We're both on that committee as well. To try to, what's that skill set look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on this earlier. Women want something that's like literally actionable, right? we are usually not only doing sort of our day job, but we also are managing the household. We're managing children if we have them. And so from that standpoint, we want the things that are actually going to be something that we can use. And the importance of the format that we're doing here is like, we literally want people to be doing the thing while we're doing the thing.
So bring your laptop or your
100%.
device. Cool.
Yeah. So it's meant that you are making micro / macro moves while you're sitting there. This is because we also know, I mean, we've all been to conferences, right? That, you know, you go, you sit through, you're like absorbing everything that's there. You're taking like tons and tons of notes. And then you go home and you put that notebook on your shelf and you move on with the rest of your life. And, you know, maybe you remember a few key things that you sort of bring in as you come back. What we are trying to do is set up with the tools, with the worksheets, with the actual pieces to implement. So you're actually doing the thing.
We both take that breath like we're going to ask a question at the exact same time.
So we talked about earlier, you have all female speakers at this, which is amazing. But the ratio of women versus men in technology spaces is radically different.
Yes.
What are some of those challenges that women face in this industry that men maybe aren't even aware of?
Well, I mean, there's, of course, just being the lone voice in the room. It's really hard to be heard when you're the lone voice in the room. So I think there's part of that is there's just not enough of us there. I don't think we're necessarily looked at as like the first natural hiring choice because there is a natural bias that says that women aren't techie. So I think that there's sort of those biases that unfortunately we have to overcome. I do think it also comes from women supporting women in making sure that we're, you know, volunteering and mentoring and giving opportunity to lead younger women or even older women. I mean, I get so excited when I do a speaking engagement and there's somebody who maybe is you know, at the point of retirement or maybe has retired and they're like, oh my gosh, I have like a renewed sense of like something new I want to do now because of knowing that I have this opportunity. So I think that there's sort of those pieces. There's also the funding piece, right? Which is if you wanted to create a big company that requires a lot of funding, which I think this, you know, the DeepSeek is going to bring a very interesting sort of conversation to how tech companies are funded at this moment. But from that standpoint, I mean, it's even the money that women get. I mean, we get less than 1% of VC funding, and that's across the board. That's just full stop. And so from that standpoint, I think it's also encouraging and from angel investors, VCs, stop asking different questions of women when they come in to meet with you. Just have a set style of questions that you ask everybody and then fund based on the answers. Women get different questions.
Yeah, and I read in prep for this podcast, I actually read, and I'm terrible at who actually said it, but there was a quote that she said, "Don't give me the opportunity, give me funding." Yeah. She has products that she wants to bring to market. She has ideas. And it's like, she just needs a chance to prove it, if you will, not prove it to the white men, the white middle-aged men in the tech groups, but just, she needs funding to do it like everybody else does.
Yeah.
So talking about that, where it's the obvious gender gap in how women are treated in this industry, what can male allies do to kind of break that down, to understand it, and to help women? I don't want to say to boost them because it's not up to us, but to help break down some of those barriers. What can we do as an ally?
So men are really good at having relationships and making introductions for each other. Now, I would say that women aren't always good at even finding their male counterpart to make those introductions. But I do think it's, even if you know of someone that is a woman that's looking to start something, help make the introductions and help bring them into the fold so that they can have the same conversations that everybody else is. I mean, we always laugh about the golf course, right? Like all deals are struck on a golf course. And I'm not saying that they don't, and I'm also not saying that women don't golf. But I would also say I think there are other places that we can make introductions, whether it's coffees, whether it's lunch, in being able to sort of foster those relationships, because the truth of the matter is people are going to give money to people that they know, people that they know have a good reputation, people that they trust. Right. And women are more likely to have $1 billion company. Women are more likely to pay back the money that they borrow or give investors back a profit. We statistically are much higher than men, much higher.
Interesting.
Now, the question is, okay, is that because there aren't enough women that are funded? So the ones that actually make it through, that fight so hard to get through and actually, get the funding, is that sort of why they're successful? But I even look at women that have exited companies. They've built their own companies. They haven't even taken VC money because most women bootstrap, right? They self-fund. And they've had exits of excess of $20, $50 million, $100 million out of their businesses that they didn't even receive any funding for. They can't even get on a stage to talk about what they're doing. And, you have a male counterpart that exited for $10 million that's getting paid to be on stage, and a woman can't even pay to be on stage. It's just a really interesting time that we live in. And I'm really excited as we sort of continue to have people like me, people like the Women Who AI, which is focused only on, on giving women voices. Yep. And as we have more and more of these places that are really looking to lift up women in these spaces and bring awareness to the amazing things that they're doing, I think that that's going to help as we move forward. But I would say that all of our male counterparts out there that have relationships and have stages for people to be on, please reach out. I am happy to make introductions to other people that might fit the topics that you're looking for. And please make sure that you're not just putting women in the marketing and the ethics buckets.
And do you think that would then play into companies as well, like different strategies that they can employ to attract and retain more women in technology in an AI fields?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that part of it too is that we need more women to be also getting into the space and interested in the space. I will say, though, that the number of women coming out with computer science degrees is not matching the amount of women that are being employed in those same positions. So I think that there needs to be a better bridge also between the education and getting into the field. So we need more sort of mentorship, more types of internships that are allowing for women to sort of prove that they're just as good as their counterparts and deserve the opportunity to also have these positions. And I'm not trying to say that you should pick a woman over a man when looking at it. It still should be, I think, based on the skill, right? This is not me, sort of fighting for that. Sure. But I think it's also the fact that there's that natural bias that says, well, if it's an equal split, the man has to be better. I would just challenge that thought.
Do you think, kind of going off of that and just kind of thinking this through, I always like the perspective because it's obviously a perspective I don't have other than working with other women. Do you think that using Claude, using Gemini, using ChatGPT and the answers, the output it gives, do you think that has a lot of that gender male-female bias to it?
It's interesting that you say that. I actually have a very good friend who unfortunately lost her sister the end of last year. And she was having a really hard time sort of writing about her sister.
Yeah.
And she actually turned to Claude, and, sort of said that she was having this struggle. And it was interesting how he replied in a standpoint was very empathetic. And I mean, to a degree where when she sent the full exchange with him, I was sobbing because it was just sort of, I know this is so difficult. I know that you've, loved your sister so much. I mean, it was just, I wish I had the exact message to read to you right now, because the amount of empathy put into this response was so human-like. The tools are going to be somewhat reflective of how you respond to it.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, what you put into it. And I think the more that we put those types of things in, that we're not just putting business things in, we're not just putting really factual, type of hard sales, VSLs and things like that. The more that I think it allows sort of some of that empathy and some of that emotion to come out. Now, I will say that the people who started, Anthropic, which is the company that created Claude versus, I mean, if we remember back, I mean, OpenAI originally started as a research lab. Right. So that had a little bit of a different influence in, how it was being trained as well. And so there certainly is bias in the tools, period. There 100% is bias. If you go into Midjourney, which is an image generation tool, which, that's had quite a bit of press. So you might have heard of it.
Sure.
If you just say create a woman, it will come back with an Asian woman.
Why is that?
98% of the time. Well, because the odds are that it was the model was trained with those images, and I would also challenge that I think a lot of the males that got into that space that were creating those spaces, that's maybe the imagery that they preferred, and so the more that they created that and sort of like voted up in a way, if you sort of understand how Midjourney imaging works and how you sort of select images and then you sort of run remixes or variations off of that, et cetera. The tool learns like, what are you selecting off of this? And now they actually even have a further enhancement that allows you to actually like sort of train, in essence, your own model. So you can sort of like go through and say, I like this image or I like this image, and then it will influence your output. So, but that's how you start to see bias. It's really easy to see it in image because of the fact that it's so visceral. What you get back. Yeah. In the copy, like I said, if you actually train it, like you're seasoning it and you train it on your own information, you will see a little bit less bias because of the fact that it's going to go based off of you. But natively, yes, you'll see more bias in these tools.
That makes sense. It
does make sense, Drew. So aside from being an AI expert, a public speaker on AI, you have your own business. You're an entrepreneur. You have a rich marketing background. Could you talk about your business and what you do? You had a couple of my favorite buzzwords earlier when you were talking about your client. You said automation and I forget what the other one. Yeah, thank you. So could you speak to that?
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, so we basically, originally I had a branding agency, right? And we really worked AI into that, which is like, how did you actually take something that would be like this huge lead time and really expensive, and how do you actually, sort of ramp it up and almost make it a DIY, right? Like how could you create your own brand? And what we started noticing, and this, I think you probably heard the entire time we've talked today, we started noticing that there was a lack of understanding from our clients, especially corporate clients, which was IT was driving how artificial intelligence, like the on-off button is like what I like to call it. They just decided either you could have access to a tool, you couldn't have access to a tool. But they didn't really think about like what the implications were and especially across like a multidiscipline space. And that was really where we started doing sort of on the consulting side, where we, go in, we evaluate sort of where are the opportunities. We do training for teams that are on specific use cases, again, about the action piece. And then we either, take on with, some development partners that we have, or we just, make the introductions to other development partners if it's more sophisticated. Okay. But we've been working a lot with manufacturing companies, and that's been really exciting because the amount of influence you can have is massive.
Yeah.
Massive. It's cool. Exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. So marketing and AI is like this frustration point in my head, and we talk about this for the company that I work for, is it seems like such low hanging fruit. When you think about content creation, Gen AI is awesome at that. And there's automations that can be built, but it doesn't feel like it's there yet. And we talk here about, inspiration and application. Do you have a favorite application story where AI like just saved a ton of time? Like if there's a business leader listening to this, they'd be like, yes, I want to save time. I want to save money. Like, do you have a cool story that you can share around that?
Yeah, so I'll answer it sort of two ways. Number one, from like a marketing standpoint, it's really short-sighted to look at it as I just want it to create this content, like this one small thing. It's really when you look at it across the entire workflow, that's where things get exciting because you can sort of tie things together so that you can actually get multiple things that sort of work all the way through to create the end thing. It's really, although it increases your time when you think about creating just the content piece, it certainly will create just the content piece, but then you still have to do something with the content.
Yeah.
So if you don't actually think about like how you're going to like automate it all the way through, I mean, there are some really exciting and interesting things, even just on, scraping like the latest trends that are happening and how you can convert that into content and how you can feed that into a system that then will post out. And you still need some humans to just fact check and make sure that, it's what you want to put out. But imagine that you go down to being at the end of the work stream where you're just approving yes, no, versus having to be yes, no at every single one of those stages. And the reason why you have that luxury, even if you have to start again, is the fact that you didn't have to touch it at all before then.
Right.
Yeah. So, so from like, I know we talked a little bit about the marketing side. So those pieces get really exciting. Like, I have a podcast where I profile female entrepreneurs and I think about like my workflow for that. I literally have a worksheet that's set up that flows in based on the speaker's input when my guest, when they fill out their application. It actually feeds into a document that then outputs everything. And all I have to do is literally just open up StreamYard and, basically read the intro, and read the outro, and we're good to go. I mean, I basically, outside of the guest having to fill in their own information, it's been completely automated. It's nice. Just so exciting. When you think about, sort of more on the corporate side and things that can be done, I mean, there's a lot of sort of confidential things involved in different companies, sort of, opportunities. But I will say, I mean, there's some really interesting things being done, even with, setting up cameras to figure out sort of like where you optimize, performance of like where the extra moves come in. There's some really interesting things from like HR onboarding. Think about like multi-language and think about like when you've spent all this money to create all these LMS systems. And then, you have to record those in multiple languages. You don't have to do that anymore because AI basically will even make the lips move in exactly the way that they need to. Think about, engaging. So, we have this My Right Hand AI assistant that you can even do a demo with right now, a voice demo, which basically it will be like your assistant. And, think about like a small business and the fact that maybe they can't afford to hire someone, or they thought they couldn't afford to hire someone, or maybe just like the onboarding to even like educate them. Well, you can have an entire knowledge base that's everything about your company. And then you basically just put this AI on front. Now it's ethically, you always say, hi, I'm, Raven, the AI assistant or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then the person can still feel like they're talking to someone. They can still get answers. And then they only need to hit the, abort button to talk to a human when they can't get the answers there. Right. But for like 90% of the use cases, it can be answered that way. And that way people can engage in the way that they want to. So like when you think about your customers, some are verbal. They're not all chat-based. Right. So if the only option you have for AI integration is a chatbot, that you're still alienating a huge amount of the population.
I agree. We could talk about this for like another 2 hours. And I know you and I have before. So we should wrap it up. How do we find you, Elizabeth?
Sure. I'm pretty much on all the social channels as Elizabeth Goede, and it's Goede. Just it's a I married into that name. And if you're interested in coming to the conference, I'm really excited to have you, whether that's virtually or in person. And you can get your tickets at AIinactionconference.com.
Awesome.
When is it?
The conference is the 28th and 29th of March of 2025.
All right. And the name of your podcast?
The name of my podcast is Spark Start Her.
Awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time to come in and chat with us, and for all the great chats we've had outside of here too, and look forward to seeing you in the AI landscape as things move forward.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe and listen to us for more episodes. Bye, everybody.